Hey everyone, and welcome back to Color Me Conway. In this video, we are going to talk about the latest episode of Severance Season 2, Episode 9. So, let's get into it. There was so much going on in this episode that I feel like I finished watching and was like, what just happened? In each of the sub-storylines and the main storyline. So let me share my top thoughts. Okay, first question I want to dig into is, what do we think is going on with Helena/Helly? In the episode, we saw a handful of weird interactions. I'd love to highlight those and hear what you all are thinking in the comments below. So first, we have that extremely bizarre interaction between her and her father at what I would say is breakfast, maybe, where Helena is eating a hard-boiled egg that her father requested to watch her eat, and then comments,
We should take them raw.
It was super cringy to watch. I would love to know what people thought in the comments below, but that one definitely had me scratching my head. The other big moment for Helly in this episode was her trying to convince Dylan's innie to stay. Dylan obviously goes through his own struggles in this episode, which we will cover, but ultimately fails at trying to convince him not to resign and help her find the export hall that Bert signaled to them to go look for. With that said, she does get the directions that Bert left for Dylan. So at one point in the episode, we see her sitting at her desk and she's trying to memorize the various directions through the office to get to the export hall. Curious what she thinks she'll do once she gets there, but she does seem determined to try to find it. So as she's trying to memorize these directions, all of a sudden we see James Egan come up in the background, of which I have to say I was terrified when this was happening because I had no idea who was coming up behind her. But then we find out that it's Jamie Egan. And then he says something like, "Helly, you tricked me." I was so taken back by that. I would love to know what people were thinking when that happened, because first, Helly doesn't know him. So I'm not sure how she could have tricked him. Or is Helly a pet name that he uses for Helena? Like, first, why or how could Helly have tricked him, and why did he put that on Helly the innie? And what does he mean? What was he doing on the severed floor looking for her, and what does he think that she or Helena is tricking him about? I would love to know what people are thinking in the comments below. Next for me, coming out of episode 9, just because I mentioned him in the Helly description, let's talk about Dylan for a minute. Obviously, Dylan's wife and Dylan's innie have been building this relationship through the last few episodes, and it progresses in multiple ways. First being that Dylan's wife admits to him that she kissed his innie, of which he's furious about, and I think that's fair. But they get into a fight, and she ends up going to Lumen to see Dylan's innie and breaking it off. And all while she breaks it off, Dylan's innie proposes to her, and wild choice. But she ends up leaving. He's obviously devastated, and that results in Dylan, the innie, resigning, of which I thought was interesting because up until this point, I don't think we've ever seen them like willingly allow an innie to just resign. There always is this tone of, you can't resign, you're out, he has to resign. And so for me, I thought it was interesting that he was able to just do some paperwork and seemingly walk out of the building. But I'm curious if people think this is the last we'll see of Dylan and Dylan's innie. So would love to know what people thought about that portion of the episode in the comments below. Okay, next, let's cover Bert and Irving. So obviously I've been really tracking their relationship over the last few episodes. It's been a point of interest for me to see how this progresses. In episode 9, we basically learn that Bert was some type of like driver for Lumen.
I drove people places. And asked what happened to them once they got there.
And similarly, he takes Irving on a drive and insists that they take one. I will say, I don't know if this is something that we should have understood and it just went over my head, but I wasn't super sure why this was happening. I know that Mr. Drummond took an interest in what Irving's Audi was doing, but I wasn't super clear why Bert was bringing Irving to a train station, giving him a one-way ticket and saying, like, do not come back to Kier. Curious what people thought. I don't know if people think that Lumen was prepared to, like, kill Irving over his, side investigation of what was happening at the company, but would love to know what people are thinking. It ending in that way was really interesting to me. Again, just as I said with Dylan, I don't know, do we think this is the last we see of Irving or Bert come the final episode? Curious what you guys thought. Let me know in the comments. All right, next, let's talk about Milchek this episode. So I was so proud of him for finally standing up for himself with Drummond and Lumen. Like, he has been treated terribly. And Mr. Drummond totally deserved that. So for the first time, I'm actually happy with something Milchek did. I loved to see his snarkiness. I also thought it was the first human moment we've ever seen of Milchek. I don't think through season 1 or 2 we've ever understood Milchek as a real person. He's always been this sort of robotic Lumen employee, and that's really where things stood with Milchek. But in this episode, I felt like we got to see him fed up and like finally saying something to his defense. So, I'm curious what people thought about that. That to me felt like the first real like visible emotion we've seen from Milchek, aside from maybe when he got those paintings. But would love to know what you guys thought of Milchek's first moment of defiance. I don't know if people think that might carry through to the finale, but would love to know what you all are thinking in the comments below. Okay, and the last call out I will make about episode 9 is around Mark and Devin meeting up with Cobell. If you've been watching my previous videos, you know I was not a fan of this choice. I do not think you can trust Cobell, and I felt like Devin was blowing up what Mark was trying to do by reaching out to Cobell in the first place. With that said, they do meet up in like the woods, and Cobell is giving the facade of allyship. I honestly still cannot tell if she is in it to help Mark or in it for some ulterior motive that is going to end up being shitty and we just don't know it yet. Because I think if we've learned anything about this show, they don't do anything unless it means something. And I will say nothing looked more grim than when Mark walked in the room of that cabin and there was like fire and lights behind Cobell in that room. And so I think that is foreshadowing that this isn't really helping Mark. Cobell has her own motivations for doing this, and it might be at the expense of what Mark is trying to accomplish, obviously finding Gemma and getting her out of this like Lumen prison state that she is in on the export hall. So I'm super curious what people are thinking there. If anyone disagrees with me or agrees, please let me know in the comments below. All right, those were my top thoughts about episode 9. I cannot wait for the season finale. If you have made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please smash the like button, consider subscribing, and I will catch you in the last and final one.